Today we are celebrating the third Sunday of Easter. The readings today are beautiful, especially the story of Luke, of the two Emmaus travelers with Jesus, finding Jesus on their journey. We too are journeying through faith, and we look also to find Jesus in our life.
A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. On the day of Pentecost, Peter stood up with the 11 and addressed the crowd in a loud voice. Men of Israel, listen to what I am going to say. Jesus the Nazarene was a man commended to you by God, by the miracles and portents and signs that God worked through him when he was among you, as you all know. This man, who was put into your power by the deliberate intention and foreknowledge of God, you took and had him crucified by men outside the law. You killed him, but God raised him to life, freeing him from the pangs of Hades. For it was impossible for him to be held in its power, since, as David says of him, I saw the Lord before me always, for with him at my right hand nothing can shake me. So my heart was glad, and my tongue cried out with joy. My body too will rest in the hope that you will not abandon my soul to Hades, nor allow your Holy One to experience corruption. You have made known the way of life to me. You will fill me with gladness through your presence. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Show us, Lord, the path of life.
Show us, Lord, the path of life.
Preserve me, God. I take refuge in you. I say to the Lord, you are my God. O Lord, it is you who are my portion and cup. It is you yourself who are my prize.
Show us, Lord, the path of life.
I will bless the Lord who gives me counsel, who even at night directs my heart. I keep the Lord ever in my sight. Since he is at my right hand, I shall stand firm.
Show us, Lord, the path of life.
And so my heart rejoices, my soul is glad, even my body shall rest in safety. For you will not leave my soul among the dead, nor let your beloved know decay.
Show us, Lord, the path of life.
You will show me the path of life, the fullness of joy in your presence, at your right hand, happiness forever.
Show us, Lord, the path of life. A reading from the first letter of Saint Peter. If you are acknowledging as your Father one who has no favorites, and judges everyone according to what he has done, you must be scrupulously careful as long as you are living away from your home. Remember, the ransom that was paid to free you from the useless way of life your ancestors handed down was not paid in anything corruptible, neither in silver nor gold, but in the precious blood of a lamb without spot or stain, namely Christ, who, though known since before the world was made, has been revealed only in our time, the end of the ages, for your sake. Through him you now have faith in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory for that very reason, so that you would have faith and hope in God. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Alleluia, alleluia.
Alleluia.
Lord Jesus, explain the scriptures to us. Make our hearts burn within us as you talk to us. Alleluia.
The Lord be with you, and also with you. A reading from the Gospel according to Luke. Glory be to you, O Lord. Two of the disciples of Jesus were on their way to a village called Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem, and they were talking together about all that had happened. Now, as they talked this over, Jesus himself came up and walked by their side. But something prevented them from recognizing him. He said to them, "What matters are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped short, but faces downcast. Then one of them, called Cleopas, answered him, "You must be the only person staying in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have been happening there these last few days." "What things?" he asked. "All about Jesus of Nazareth," they answered, "who proved he was a great prophet by the things he said and did in the sight of God and of the whole people, and how our chief priests and our leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death and had him crucified. Our own hope had been that he would be the one to set Israel free. And this is not at all. 2 whole days have gone by since it all happened, and some women from our group have astounded us. They went to the tomb in the early morning, and when they did not find the body, they came back to tell us they had seen a vision of angels who declared he was alive. Some of our friends went to the tomb and found everything exactly as the woman had reported, but of him they saw nothing. Then he said to them, "You foolish men, so slow to believe the full message of the prophets. Was it not ordained that the Christ should suffer and so enter into his glory?" Then, starting with Moses and going through all the prophets, he explained to them the passages throughout the scriptures that were about himself. When they drew near to the village to which they were going, he made as if to go on, but they pressed him to stay with them. "It is nearly evening," they said, "and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. Now, while he was with them at table, he took the bread and said the blessing. Then he broke it and handed it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. But he had vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Did not our hearts burn within us as he talked to us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" They set out that instant and returned to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 assembled together with their companions, who said to them, "Yes, it is true. The Lord has risen and appeared to Simon." Then they told their story of what had happened on the road and how they had recognized him at the breaking of bread. The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to you, O Lord. Well, this is a story that we all know. It's a beautiful story, but it gives us a lot to reflect on our own journey, from unbelief to belief, from despair to hope. The first part of the story is like our liturgy of the Word of God that we have just heard. Jesus proclaims the word to the 2 despairing disciples and opens their eyes to the meaning of the scriptures. Then we have a liturgy of the Eucharist, just as he did at the Last Supper. Jesus takes bread, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it to his disciples. In the breaking of the bread, the eyes of the disciples are opened, and they come to believe in Jesus' presence. Some commentators note that Luke uses the story to communicate to those who are missing the physical presence of Christ that their celebration of the Eucharist is the new way that Jesus is going to be with them, your meals, and the presence of Jesus amongst you, just as he had them prior to the resurrection with his teaching. Now he will continue to feed and nourish them in and through the proclamation of the Scriptures and the breaking of the bread. When they said, "And we gather together to listen to his word and break bread," Jesus is truly in our midst. All of us have taken a trip at one time or another in our lives. We take trips for business purposes, for pleasure, or for other reasons. A trip might even consist of merely going across town to shop or to visit people we love or we care about. Today's gospel is a story about two disciples who are on a journey. Cleopas and another unnamed person are taking a short trip from Jerusalem to Emmaus, about 7 miles. Of course, they are walking. They are hoping that Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet, who had been powerful in word and deed, the one who had been condemned to death and crucified, is the one who will set free the Jews from Roman domination. There has been a story, too, that Jesus is alive. But these two do not believe such a rumor. In the early evening, they pick up a hitchhiker, and together they discuss the Old Testament. When it comes time for dinner, they invite the stranger walking with them to join them. The man accepts. When he breaks bread with them, their eyes are opened to the fact that their guest is truly Jesus. These two disciples travel from doubt to despair, to faith in the resurrection of Jesus. We too are on a trip. We spend our lives traveling, not only on business or for pleasure or to visit family or friends, but also from doubt and despair to faith in the resurrection of Jesus. We do not go on the same physical road taken by the two disciples, but we travel the same road of faith. As we do, we find that we can sojourning in what appears to be a strange land. We doubt and despair in times of sickness, or when we find out that someone we know and love has cancer, or has the virus, the coronavirus, that we are all so much afraid of at this moment, or some other terminal disease. That's when we travel the road of doubt, asking why this would happen to us or to such a person. If there is a God, why does he permit such things to happen? Then somehow, sooner or later, God breaks through into our lives. We come to accept our human limitations, learn how to share in suffering, toss aside our anger with God, and see how God is at work in our lives through this sickness. We travel the road of doubt and despair to believe, like those disciples of old. As death is dealt with and accepted, and as people work through their grief, they gradually come to life again. They travel the road from doubt and despair to believe, as did those two disciples walking to Emmaus. We spend our whole lives making this trip over and over again. Each one of us knows this road very well. We are constantly taking this trip from doubt and despair to faith. Along the way, we experience the resurrection of Jesus. We discover Jesus alive and with us. Sometimes we are so caught up in our doubt and despair that we cannot see Jesus as he travels with us. The two disciples are also blinded by their doubt and despair. They cannot see that the hitchhiker who makes their hearts burn is Jesus with them. The very moments of doubt and despair are themselves a sign of God at work in our lives. God works through us, just as he once did with Jesus. Doubt and despair, while not pleasant experiences, can be the signs and wonders that reveal to us the God who raised Jesus from the dead. These are our credentials showing that God is with us as we travel through life. All through life's day, you walk with us, Lord, but often we don't recognize you, for we are blinded by work and worry, doubt, confusion, and fear, and so you remain a stranger to us. Before day's end, we will ask many questions, experience many sorrows and disappointments, and then suddenly we will find that night is approaching. In that moment, we pray that, like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, our eyes will be opened and that we will recognize you.